what would any collection, even at-home clothes or lingerie or ski clothes, be without fake fur?
That's right. It is seen all over this year, and it's so smart.
I noticed that there are a number of hidden zippers in these jackets. Now, what are these for, Betsy? They can't be for, is it for mad money?
Well, it depends on where they're placed. They can be wherever you want them.
Uh-huh.
You know, for the pockets so that no snow gets into it, the zipper holding the hood in because it's easier to put the hood on and off with the zipper than it is with the snaps. Then there's zippers up the side so that the jacket will fit tightly around the hips, keeping that straight, sleek look that it should have. And very often you'll find a zipper hidden in the arm. And
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You'll excuse the fact that I'm out of breath, but about 10 or 15 minutes ago, a tragic thing, from all indications at this point, has happened in the city of Dallas. Let me quote to you this.
So it happened. The end of America's innocence, and the official beginning to one of its most turbulent eras.
Days of rioting in Attorney General Robert Kennedy was in Selma and over 4 climates.
No beginning and no ending.
More than half a century later, this tragic event still lies shrouded in mystery, with a host of unanswered questions. Why had it happened? How was it able to occur in broad daylight, in front of hundreds of witnesses? Why had the president's protection failed? Are the medical records and autopsy x-rays authentic? Where did the shots actually come from? And could they be the work of a single gunman? Or was the assassination the result of a broader conspiracy? U.S. forces on the ground in Vietnam, numbering 16,000, were set to begin a steady drawdown.
The plan was to withdraw 1,000 troops by the end of the year, and then to begin a gradual phase-out of all troops by the end of 1965. Kennedy had no desire to be involved in a war with a communist country in Southeast Asia, when we had a communist country 90 miles off our shore in Cuba, and he wasn't going to war with them. So he was very interested in getting out of Vietnam, not getting in deeper.
Designed as a public relations trip, but also an opportunity to unite factions of his own Democratic Party ahead of the 1964 elections, the President and Mrs. Kennedy arrived in San Antonio.
Kennedy said, "We're going into nut country today."
We do stand on the edge of a great new era.
It is the beginning of what would be a 3-day, 5-city visit to Texas.
Filled with both crisis and opportunity.
A lot of the people that loved Kennedy, and a lot of people that hated him really hated him. He was considered weak on communism by much of the right wing, ultra-conservative in a lot of ways. He had annoyed a lot of people with some of his legislation.
An era to be characterized by achievement and by challenge.
Many of his advisors had warned him not to come to Dallas because of the extreme right-wing nature of Dallas and some of the conservatives in Dallas, but he came anyway.
Houston was next on the Whirlwind Tour, where JFK and Jackie were joined by Vice President Lyndon Johnson and Texas Governor John Connally. That evening they had a full slate with a dinner, speeches, and political events.
In Texas and the nation, change has been the law of life. Growth has meant new opportunities for this state. Progress has meant new achievements. And we dare not look back now.
They started the first day by covering both San Antonio and Houston. And then they came into Fort Worth late Thursday night, so late they did not do any function.
President Kennedy awoke the next morning to a misty, overcast day. But when he looked out his window, he saw that a large crowd had gathered outside the hotel. He could not miss a chance for some politicking, so he decided to have an impromptu press conference, which drove the Secret Service and the Fort Worth police a little nuts. But He went out there and spoke to the masses, and they loved it.
The president returned to the hotel for a public breakfast. Knowing how to make an entrance, the First Lady arrived wearing what would become her most memorable ensemble.
This is a very dangerous and uncertain world. We would like to live as we once lived, but history will not permit it. But I'm confident that our chances for security, our chances for peace, are better than they've been in the past.
With one last drive through the city and now bright skies above, the citizens of Fort Worth see that the presidential party gets sent off in style. Their arrival in Dallas has all the traditional pomp and circumstance to be expected.
There was a lot of people there at Love Field to greet him, and he went up and down the fence shaking hands.
Now Governor Connolly and his wife Nellie are riding with JFK and Jackie. The motorcade is on track to make its 11-mile trip through downtown Dallas, ending at the Trade Mart, where Kennedy is scheduled to give a speech.
President's car is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the Trade Mart.
Once the motorcade turned on to Elm, it was in the free and clear, and it was a straight shot to the Stemmons Freeway and onto the Trade Mart.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route.
The motorcade speeds away from the stunned witnesses in Dealey Plaza and on to Parkland Hospital. While back in the plaza, police find the incriminating evidence on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. And within minutes, a suspect description is released, leading to Lee Harvey Oswald's arrest in the Texas Theater, not even an hour after the assassination.
I really don't know what the situation is about. Nobody has told me anything except that I'm accused of murdering a policeman. I know nothing more than that, and I do request someone to come forward to give me a legal assistance.
Did you kill the president?
No, I've not been charged with that. In fact, nobody has said that to me yet. The first thing I heard about it was when the newspaper reporters in the hall asked me that question.
You have been.
Nobody said what? Sir?
You have been.
Nobody said what? Okay, man. Okay.
Just 2 days after the most shocking murder in American history, everything appeared to be a simple, open and shut case, with all the details pointing to a single, convenient conclusion. But was it just that? A case of a lone assassin and incredible police work? Or were the coincidences just too great? A week later, the President's Commission on the Assassination of President Kennedy, unofficially known as the Warren Commission, was established. A year later, the official findings of their investigation would, throughout the years, raise as many questions as it attempted to answer. Is the Warren Commission's contention that JFK was assassinated by a single gunman plausible?
I emphatically deny these charges.
Evidence against the Commission's conclusion has pointed overwhelmingly to a wider conspiracy. In 1976, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, the HSCA, was established. After 2 years of investigation, its final report indicated the likelihood of a conspiracy.
Over the years, there have been many theories as to what actually happened that weekend in Dallas. Be it the Russians were involved with the KGB, the Israeli Mossad, the Cubans with Castro, the Mafia was angry because Bobby Kennedy was persecuting them. All of this is a distraction.
Indeed, most of these theories were ruled out by the HSCA. So who then would have had the access, the ability to control the evidence, and the means to ensure that the cover-up remained in place indefinitely.
I always thought the valor of the Secret Service, how they would literally, throw themselves in front of potential assassin's bullets, and always fascinated me. And the question to me was always, wait a minute, why didn't these agents do more to protect the man? And the more I looked into it, the more I realized there were a lot of anomalies, a lot of questions that needed to be answered on the subject.
No one has spent more time studying the Secret Service's actions that day than Vince Palamara.
Standard operating procedure in an open motorcade would have been for the agents to be running, walking, or jogging with the presidential limousine. And there was also 2 handrails in the back for an agent or agents to hold on to, so they would be in close proximity to the president. Agents not riding on the rear of the limo is a huge issue in this case. The Secret Service agents are powerless to really do much of anything if they're not close to the president. And official mythology, I like to call it, is that President Kennedy allegedly ordered the agents off the car 4 days before Dallas.
Claiming President Kennedy asked for changes to the motorcade's normal security protocols had been a recurring theme during the Warren Commission.
I spoke to the special agent in charge of the White House detail, the #1 agent, Gerald Bain. I asked him, President Kennedy, I understand he was difficult to protect, right? He didn't want the agents on the back of the car, and he told me, this is an exact quote, "I don't remember Kennedy ever saying anything about not having agents on the back of the car. If you look at the newsreels, you'll see agents on there." Well, one by one, I spoke to many of his colleagues, not only in the Secret Service, but actually White House aides that were not Secret Service agents, and it was a landslide. They were all telling me the same thing.
Supposedly Kennedy ordered the agents off the back of the limousine. No, he had nothing to do with that. For the record of history, that is false.
President Kennedy, very nice man, not difficult to protect, did not order the agents off the back of the car.
This complete departure from procedure is captured here as the motorcade begins to leave Love Field Airport in Dallas.
Jogging beside the car was an agent. In the follow-up car behind him, another agent rises from his seat and does hand gestures like this, obviously to order him to cease and desist. The agent stops in his tracks 3 times, not once, not twice, but 3 times, goes like this. And actually, that's the universal body language for what is going on. Turns out the agent name was Don Lawton, and he's the agent who's formerly told to cease and desist by shift leader Emory Roberts, who rises in his seat with the hand gestures, and you see Don Lawton going like this. Don Lawton rode on the back of the car on the Chicago trip earlier in 1963, and 4 days before in Tampa. But he's relegated to meaningless Love Field luggage duty during the motorcade, during the assassination. It's ridiculous.
Secret Service agent Clint Hill is also recalled from his position on the opposite side of the limousine. Emory Roberts had been the only one of 3 Secret Service shift leaders from the White House that was part of the motorcade.
Emory Roberts was in charge of the follow-up car that was immediately behind JFK, full of Secret Service agents. He was the general, so to speak, of the follow-up car. If he said something, that's how it went.
Emory Roberts, however, received his orders from Floyd Boring, the #2 man of the Secret Service White House detail, based in Washington.
Floyd Boring, he was in charge of planning the Texas trip, and he was the one who gave out assignments.
In an interview with the Assassination Records Review Board in 1996, he stated that there had been no change in policy for the Dallas trip and put the blame on President Kennedy. The #1 man and head of the White House detail, Gerald Bain, was on vacation starting the week before the Texas trip, which left the immediate handling of the trip to Boring. Floyd Boring's right-hand man in charge of the logistics on the ground in Texas was Special Agent Winston Lawson.
Winston Lawson came from the Buffalo, Syracuse, New York area. He was a former counterintelligence agent in the Army, and he joined the Secret Service in 1959. And again, he was an advance agent, an agent that would actually go to the different cities, towns in America and overseas in advance to work with the local police and dignitaries and whatnot to get everything in line with motorcade rides, building security, etc., etc.
Lawson, assisted by Agent Roger Warner, set the order of the vehicles in the Dallas motorcade.
The normal order would have been to have a pilot car and a lead car, which was done in Dallas. Then you had a flatbed truck of the press photographers in front of the limousine filming and being eyewitnesses, and that in and of itself is a deterrent. And you had the press buses close behind the limousine, again, professional newsmen, eyewitnesses, they would have been there filming.
Conveniently, the press was moved back at the last minute. There wouldn't have been a need for Abraham Zapruder, an amateur, to film the assassination.
Another break from routine in the Dallas motorcade, the positioning of police motorcycles around the president's limousine.
As with any other motorcade, the Secret Service worked hand in hand with local authorities to ensure the safety of the president. Usually surrounding the car, there would be a group of motorcycles. This was not only to obscure or block the view of potential assassins, but also to prevent anyone from the public who might be viewing, who got too excited, from approaching the car.
And up to and including the day before the assassination, this held true. In his prior Texas stops in San Antonio, Houston, and Fort Worth, normally there were 6 to 9 motorcycle officers around the presidential limousine in a wedge formation, including flanking the car, which means in translation, they were riding right beside JFK. Then all of a sudden there is a last minute change and the motorcycles are reduced to 4 beside the car, but then they're not even beside the car, they're not flanking anymore, they're moved behind. Translation, the formation was meaningless. It offered no protection at all. In fact, when the shooting began, you don't even see the motorcycle officers around the car.
Agent Lawson told the Warren Commission why he had ordered the motorcycles to fall back from the limousine.
Well, it's my understanding he couldn't hear conversation well, and that's why he didn't want the motorcycles beside him. And yet they had no problem that morning in Fort Worth, the day before in San Antonio and Houston, and 4 days before, a week before, the month before, the year before, the years before. They left Kennedy a sitting duck.
Another line of protection for the president that wasn't used was the limousine's bubble top.
The bubble top was a plexiglass covering that was put on the car, the presidential limousine. The conventional wisdom that it was bulletproof or bullet resistant. Turns out it was not bulletproof or bullet resistant in the standard way we think of that. However, it was a psychological deterrent because most people assumed it was bulletproof.
Popular belief has it that the limousine's bubble top was not used for 2 reasons. 1, because what started as an overcast and dreary day turned sunny and clear.
The actual films and photos of several motorcades shows the bubble top on in the brightest weather conditions imaginable. So there's a myth that it was only on there for inclement weather. Not true. And the bottom line, what the bubble top would have done is it would have obscured an assassin's view via the sun's glare.
The second reason most often given as to why the bubble top had not been used is that the president had requested not to use it.
But I spoke to the agent who was the driver of the follow-up car, Sam Kinney. Sam Kinney adamantly on 3 different occasions told me that President Kennedy had nothing to do with it. It was solely his responsibility.
Supposedly, JFK said, I'm quoting now, get that goddamn bubble top off. Listen, that is not true.
The bubble top came in 6 pieces, but sometimes it was on there for just the front and rear pieces were on, so it would be an open car and some semblance of protection as well. A partial bubble top with the front and rear pieces on, and he would be able to get air and be able to stand up, and he didn't have that configuration. It's just a question of why. Why wasn't at least that configuration used in Dallas?
Another troubling inconsistency with Secret Service protocols was the monitoring of buildings.
Buildings were not properly monitored in Dallas. Windows were not even properly monitored by the Secret Service. Wynn Lawson said it was usual instructions to give out these orders to scan the windows along the parade route, but he didn't remember giving out the order or not. And it turns out that Dallas police that were also involved in security of the motorcade route said that no orders were given. The bottom line protocol were agents or local police or both were supposed to monitor buildings. Daly Plaza was not properly cleared, was not properly monitored, and the overpasses, any potential overpasses that would have been cleared to spectators and manned by local police.
Even more alarming is what happened inside the Secret Service car directly behind the president's limousine once shots rang out. Shift leader Emory Roberts would give an order to the other agents in the car.
When the assassination begins, he orders the men not to move. Sam Kinney, the driver of the fob car, who's right beside him, confirmed to me that this happened. He ordered the men not to move at the beginning of the assassination.
Emory Roberts supposedly ordered the men not to move. That's exactly right.
These men were sworn to protect the president, to dive in front of a bullet if need be, to sacrifice their body. And you mean to tell me this man is going to order them to cease and desist when the shooting begins?
And just what were the Secret Service agents who were actually inside the president's limousine doing at the time of the shooting?
Agents Bill Greer and Roy Kellerman were pivotal to the success of the assassination, and they were pivotal to the success of the assassination through inaction. Bill Greer was the driver of the president's limousine in Dallas. Roy Kellerman was riding right beside him. Greer hits the gas pedal, Kennedy lives. First shot rings out. Bill Greer looks back at the president. His foot's on the brake too because the car slows down. It's only going 11.2 miles an hour. It's crawling at this point. And then Roy Kellerman says, "Get out of line, we've been hit." That's when Bill Greer turns around a second time and is staring at Kennedy and doesn't do anything until Kennedy is killed. Yes, it was only 6 to 8 seconds, depending on estimates, but that is a lifetime for a Secret Service agent. Count down 6 to 8 seconds and watch the video of Reagan being shot. These men, by the time the 8-second shot, they're well out of there. Let alone 2, 3, 5 seconds. Amazing what they did. And Roy Kellerman, for his part, doesn't jump. He doesn't jump back. He's turned around. He's staring at Kennedy too.
The shooting had stopped by the time Clint Hill, who was assigned to protect the First Lady, finally leapt onto the limousine. Could these monumental lapses by the Secret Service just have been a series of unfortunate oversights?
How convenient that this all happened on the day allegedly a lone assassin struck the president down. 1963 protocol, President Kennedy should have lived in Dallas. He should have lived past the Dallas motorcade. But Floyd Boring, in charge of protection of the president by planning the Texas trip, Emory Roberts in charge of the fob car, and Bill Greer, the driver of the president's car. Those three men bear the largest burden of what went down in Dallas. The buck stops with the Secret Service. Yeah.
Roy Kellerman spoke with FBI agents at the president's autopsy. He was quoted with a surprising statement.
Agent Kellerman said that the security for this trip was the most stringent and thorough ever employed by the Secret Service for any trip the president ever made. Now, if you believe that, I've got some land I want to sell you.
In 1995, the government's Assassination Records Review Board, wanting to compare security in Texas against other recent trips, requested to see all Secret Service documents pertaining to presidential visits around that time. Rather than comply, the Secret Service destroyed many of its records from the fall of 1963, making any true comparisons impossible. The Zapruder film. The images it captured shocked the nation to its core. Filmed by an amateur photographer.
May I have your name, please, sir?
My name is Abraham Zapruder.
Mr. Zapruder?
Zapruder, yes, sir.
Zapruder. And would you tell us your story, please, sir?
The film has been scrutinized for decades. The footage has a dreamlike quality, aided by its silence and the disturbing events it depicts. This third-generation negative is the forensic copy of the film, obtained from the National Archives. It's as close to the original film that can be viewed. Also shown here is the de-scratched, cleaned version of the film. Both versions are presented here utilizing 6K digital scans a process in which the film negative is scanned into digital file form. 6K is approximately 10 times the resolution of the modern HD television. This allows the Zapruder film to be viewed at a level of detail and clarity previously unavailable. Not seen in the film, the first shot, a shot from the rear, missed so completely that it actually struck the curb ahead and to the left of the limousine. Officially, the second shot entered the president's back, came out of his neck, and then ping-ponged its way through Governor Connolly. This is what has come to be known as the magic bullet theory. However, the second shot, as was described by doctors at Parkland Hospital, entered the president's throat from the front.
Before disappearing behind the sign, Kennedy is facing the crowd at almost a 90-degree angle, waving to them. He's hit in the neck just before coming out from behind the sign. You can see his arms reaching up, clutching at his throat. Now, he was facing the direction of the grassy knoll area when he was shot, so it's certainly possible that a shot could have in fact come from there. Many eye and ear witnesses believe that a shot or shots came from that knoll. Plus, there were several witnesses on the overpass who say that they saw a puff of smoke come from that area as well.
At frame 242 of the film, Governor Connolly, Secret Service agent Roy Kellerman, motorcycle officers Bobby Hargis and B.J. Martin, plus Agent Clint Hill on the Secret Service follow-up car are all looking toward the grassy knoll immediately after the shot.
Was this an instinctive reaction to the sound of gunfire? We might never know for certain, but it does make you think.
Sherry Fiester is a retired senior crime scene investigator for the Dallas Police Department and author of Enemy of the Truth. She has applied her 30 years of law enforcement experience and expert witness pedigree to studying the forensics of the fatal headshot captured in frame 313 of the Zapruder film.
The Zapruder film is probably one of the most important films that we have that help to document what happens when someone is injured, especially if they're shot with a high-velocity round to the head. Now, for many years, a lot of this was misunderstood and misinterpreted because forensic investigation and research had not caught up to where we are now.
But the current state of wound ballistics and forensic knowledge can now reveal what really happened.
There's really 4 different methods to determine directionality of a projectile as it strikes a human head. As a projectile strikes the head, there's a transfer of kinetic energy that is transferred to the head, and there is an initial movement into the force. So in other words, if someone is shot from the front, they're going to move slightly into that force or move forward before they would move backwards with that continued direction of force. So if we apply that information to the Kennedy assassination, and we see that President Kennedy does in fact move slightly forward, that forward movement is then followed by a more pronounced rear movement from a single shot that originated in front of the president.
Blood spatter analysis confirms a frontal shot as well.
Blood is dispersed from the point of entry as soon as that hole is made. So, for instance, in the Zapruder film, we can make a determination about whether or not we're looking at blood that comes from an entry wound, which is called back spatter because it goes back towards the shooter, or if we're looking at forward spatter. Forward spatter comes out of the exit wound and goes forward in the continued direction of force. And it's going to travel at a speed that's much, much faster than you see in back spatter.
In fact, the exiting blood, the forward spatter, is traveling at the same speed as the bullet.
So forward spatter, which is only going to occur maybe 1 or 2 milliseconds following the initial impact of the bullet, is going to be traveling so fast that it's possible that it could actually get out of the frame and it would be so widely spread and dispersed that the individual droplets would not be as easily seen as in the backspatter, where they're compressed in a tighter pattern. It makes it easier for us to see.
Also, evidence that what we're seeing is backspatter are these white streaks, which are believed to be bone fragments traveling up and forward.
So we can make the determination that what we're actually viewing in the Zapruder film is backspatter, and that tells us we're looking at a front entry wound.
Another confirmation of a shot from the front, fracture sequencing.
When a projectile strikes the skull, the initial hole and pressure that is created push upon the skull, and little fractures occur in a linear fashion that move from the point of impact away from that point towards the continued direction of force. Then, as the kinetic energy is deposited inside the skull, you have a temporary cavity that is created where the kinetic energy pushes everything 360 degrees away from that projectile. That pressure within the skull causes concentric fractures which go around. Those fractures are closer together the closer they are to the point of impact. So if you look at a skull, it's almost like someone has laid a spider web over it, or a portion of the spider web. So when we look at the skull today, we can know that we're looking at a front impact based upon fracture sequencing.
After determining conclusively that the fatal headshot came from the front, the next step is finding the location of the shooter.
In order to reconstruct a shooting and determine where a shooter is located, there's certain steps that you have to follow. The first step in trajectory analysis would be to determine where the entry and exit wounds are located. We know that all of the injuries are on the right side of the head, so that narrows down immediately where the shooter could be located. The front right quadrant would represent the entry wound, and the right rear quadrant would represent the exit wound. If I take those two, then what I've described is an angle that says somewhere in here, the shooter for that shot was standing. Then all I have to do is think about elevation, because remember, this is a trajectory cone that we would be creating, and so it's three-dimensional. The next step would be to place President Kennedy within Dealey Plaza.
And I found a spot, one of these concrete blocks that I have down near that park near the underpass. And as I was shooting, as the president was coming down from Houston Street making his turn, it was about halfway down there, I heard a shot.
Separate studies commissioned by the House Select Committee on Assassinations and CBS News both came to the same conclusion.
Zapruder is at an approximate 90-degree angle to him. President Kennedy was nodding forward, and he was turned from Zapruder. They took the information and they said, we're looking at 25.7 degrees beyond profile. So if we know where President Kennedy was facing as opposed to Zapruder, and we can place Zapruder and we can place President Kennedy, then we should be able to say this is where he was looking. So if he's looking there, and then I've already determined that angle from the two straight line trajectories, and I put it on a map of Dealey Plaza, I can take that angle and extend it out into Dealey Plaza and say, somewhere in this area, the shooter for President Kennedy was standing. The grassy knoll is excluded.
So where, then, did the fatal headshot originate?
When you consider your trajectory cone and extending it out into Dealey Plaza, then there becomes a portion of Dealey Plaza that is viable for the shooter. That area is the south end of the triple overpass and the adjacent parking lot, which at that time did not have a fence, so it was accessible. It has the correct elevation. The president would have been looking directly at that location so that the shooter would have had a straight-on shot with the president moving towards him. And you may think that if someone is in that position, that they would be seen very easily by the other people that were standing on the bridge. But actually, the triple overpass has a winged effect at the end, and it kind of angles out. And then there's these big concrete abutments that block the view from the people that are standing on the bridge. When they look back towards the end, they can't actually see that winged angle. So it does provide concealment for them.
But if the shooter was located near the south end of the underpass, how could the president's back and to the left movement be explained?
In billiards, if you use a cue ball to strike another ball and you strike that ball on the outside edge, what happens is the ball that you struck moves forward, but it also moves in an angle. That angular momentum is exactly what we see in the Zapruder film with President Kennedy. In fact, if you have someone seated in a chair and they assume that same position as President Kennedy and you push on their forehead, they'll go back into the left too.
With modern-day forensics and science proving a shot from the front, the Warren Commission's assertion of the magic bullet theory becomes all the more difficult to accept.
There's still people that believe in the magic bullet. Oh my gosh, all these different trajectories don't work. You know, the trajectory from the school book depository to President Kennedy, through President Kennedy, from Kennedy to Connally, through Connally, there are 4 different trajectories. They don't match up at all in elevation or right to left. None of them. You're talking about the difference between 13 and 27 degrees. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. The American people deserve to know the truth. They deserve to know what really happened in Dealey Plaza.
The failings of the Secret Service left President Kennedy completely exposed to a triangulated crossfire, with potential shooters from behind, the grassy knoll, and the south end of the underpass. In December of 1991, Oliver Stone's movie JFK was released.
It created a national furor over the themes of the movie, which was that America experienced a coup. A lot of people were, on the one hand, upset with the film's theme and thought it was unwarranted and objected to it, or emotionally disliked the movie. Other people thought the movie's themes were right on target and were upset that the government was still withholding so many records about the assassination.
Due to renewed public interest in the assassination, in 1992, Congress passed the JFK Records Act.
The act required that all government agencies identify and relinquish all assassination records to the National Archives if they could release them in full. If they couldn't release them in full, the act created its enforcement arm, which was the Assassination Records Review Board.
Chief analyst for military records on the ARRB was Doug Horne.
I began work in August of 1995. The preferred culture by upper management was strict neutrality and, quite frankly, disinterest by the staff members, because that way they could not be accused of having an axe to grind or an agenda.
The ARRB had been granted several useful and special powers.
Congress specifically prohibited the review board from reinvestigating the assassination or from conducting a new investigation. The review board had the power to grant immunity if they needed to grant immunity, and the review board had the power to subpoena witnesses.
As the review board's work began, they were quickly deluged with released documents, and a startling pattern of inconsistencies appeared in the medical evidence. In particular, differing eyewitness reports of the president's wounds between Parkland Hospital in Dallas and Bethesda Naval Hospital in Maryland.
Trying to understand President Kennedy's wounds has to begin in Dallas, where the shooting occurred, and where the president was treated at Parkland Memorial Hospital.
In the Zapruder film, a flap of skull can be seen opening up after the head strike. During the frantic ride to Parkland Hospital, the flap had been folded back into place, where the blood acted like glue and sealed the wound. That wound was not spotted at Parkland, as it was obscured within the hairline.
President Kennedy has been given a blood transfusion at Parkland Hospital here in Dallas in an effort to save his life.
A cursory examination of this human skull model will reveal the key terminology that's used by the medical treatment staff at Parkland to describe the wound when they write reports the day of the assassination. The occipital bone is a term that appears in virtually every report. The occipital bone is in the rear of the skull. It's painted red on this model. It's triangular in shape, and it's in the back of the head. Where the parietal bones are, there's a right parietal bone and a left parietal bone. This is the right temporal bone, colored in pink. Most of the reports described the wound as occipital parietal or just plain occipital. So they were all in the same specific location, the right rear quadrant of the skull.
Chief Operating Room Nurse Audrey Bell appeared before the review board.
She observed President Kennedy's head wound for about 5 minutes in Trauma Room 1 the day that he was shot, before she had to leave the trauma room and go assist in the surgery on Governor Connolly. So she had a very good look at President Kennedy's head wound.
I didn't see an injury. I said, well, where's the injury? And Dr. Perry was standing there, and he reached up to the on the president's head and just pulled up a little bit, turned his head to the left a little, and there was a gaping hole.
We asked her to make diagrams of what she observed on the president's head. This is the most revealing or telling of her 4 diagrams. She saw one large occipital wound in the right rear of President Kennedy's head, devoid of scalp and skull, which was extruding damaged brain tissue and leaking fluid.
Dr. Charles Crenshaw also had been in Trauma Room 1 with the president and Nurse Bell. He also drew a diagram for the review board.
His wound is in a nearly identical position to Nurse Bell's. It's a little bit higher, but it's still largely occipital in nature and just borders on the edge of the right parietal bone.
There's a wound in the back of the head. I know it's about the size of our fist. I'm pretty fair to gauge it.
That gives one a sense of how large it was. That type of description does not equate to an entry wound. That type of description equates to an exit wound. It's exploded outward, and it's much bigger than an entry wound that would be made by a bullet.
These findings would clearly indicate a shot from the front, in stark contrast to the official story of all shots coming from the rear.
Then the president wasn't just treated for a few minutes and then declared dead. The treatment went on for 40 minutes. So I do not believe that the Dallas observations are the result of error or haste.
Also observed at Parkland, a wound to the president's throat.
A small, neat puncture wound in the neck, just above his collar line and just below his Adam's apple, or his larynx, right about in this location. That wound was about 4 to 5 millimeters in size, and it was a well-delineated puncture going inward. It was not a ragged wound. It did not have the appearance of an exit wound, and all of the doctors that observed him that day, to them it was obvious that it was an entrance wound.
At this point, President Kennedy was still alive. His breathing was in extreme duress, and Dr. Malcolm Perry performed an emergency tracheotomy.
Not wanting to make an additional wound, he took the existing wound, the puncture wound, and he made a small horizontal incision left to right, 2.5 to 3 centimeters in width. That is not very wide. Just wide enough so that they could insert a tracheal tube, a breathing tube, into the incision and then hook it up to a respirating machine, a breathing machine, which they did.
The procedure, of course, would prove futile. Dr. Crenshaw would later note in an interview with ABC News that the small incision closed of its own volition after the tube was removed. At 1 p.m., President Kennedy was declared dead, and the grim formalities of death were carried out by staff at Parkland Hospital.
The O'Neill Funeral Home had been contacted, and they brought a large, heavy ceremonial bronze casket to the hospital.
As the casket was closed and wheeled toward a waiting ambulance, it was met by the coroner.
Dr. Earl Rose, the coroner for Dallas County, insisted on doing the autopsy and said that according to Texas law, he was required to perform the autopsy because this was a homicide in the state of Texas and he wanted to comply with the law. The Secret Service pulled their coats aside, showed their weapons and holsters, and said to Dr. Rose, "We're taking the body to Washington, and if you don't get out of the way, we'll run you over with the casket."
Driven to Love Field, the casket was loaded onto Air Force One. While Lyndon Johnson was being sworn in, a communication between Roy Kellerman on Air Force One and Gerald Bain in Washington reveals that something was happening with the president's body.
Okay, go ahead. I have to call you again, so as to my body
Minutes later, Air Force One took off, headed for Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. Upon arrival, the ornate bronze casket was loaded into the back of a gray Navy ambulance. Driven by Secret Service agent William Greer, the ambulance began its 15-mile trip to Bethesda Naval Hospital.
Inside the light gray Navy ambulance were Jacqueline Kennedy, the president's widow, the president's brother, Robert F. Kennedy, the Attorney General, Secret Service agents Kellerman and Greer, who had been in the limousine during the assassination, and also the president's military physician, Admiral George Berkeley.
Meanwhile, at 6:35 p.m., a black Cadillac hearse from Gawler's Funeral Home arrived at the morgue entrance of the hospital, carrying an aluminum shipping casket.
This is a simple, inexpensive casket used to transport bodies on airplanes and trains. It did not have expensive side rails. It did not have a special viewing lid. And most Americans don't know that President Kennedy's body actually arrived at the Bethesda morgue loading dock in this aluminum shipping casket 20 minutes before the arrival of the light gray Navy ambulance containing the bronze Dallas casket.
While the passengers of the Navy ambulance thought that the president's body was with them in the bronze ceremonial casket, in reality it was being flown by helicopter in an aluminum shipping casket to Bethesda. An in-flight communication between General Ted Clifton on Air Force One and Gerald Bain at the Situation Room in Washington convey a tug of war over the president's body.
Arrangements have been made for a helicopter for the Bethesda Naval Medical Center. Over. We do not want a helicopter for Bethesda Medical Center. We do want a ambulance and a ground return from Andrews to Walter Reed. And we want the regular post-mortem that has to be done by law under guard performed at Walter Reed. Is that clear? Over.
Washington's choice, however, clearly won out.
It has been arranged to helicopter the body to Bethesda. Over.
The plan was to use 3 helicopters to fly Air Force One's passengers to the White House.
3 helicopters transport people to the White House lawn, okay? That is affirmative.
And another 2 helicopters to take the president's body to Bethesda.
White House 102 and 405X for transportation to Navy Hospital, okay? That is affirmative. You accompany the body aboard the helicopter. Roger.
Jacqueline Kennedy, however, insisted on remaining with her husband's body, forcing this plan to be altered and necessitating the public charade of the empty bronze casket being driven to Bethesda. So while the Kennedy entourage and the press believed that the president's body was inside the Navy ambulance, it was actually inside an aluminum shipping casket, making a 6-minute helicopter flight to Bethesda. The shipping casket arrived at Bethesda before the Navy ambulance, and there's documentation to corroborate this. Initially, Gawler's Funeral Home was supposed to have a hearse on standby at Andrews, but that order had been rescinded. Instead, Gawler's black Cadillac hearse was sent to meet the helicopter arriving at Bethesda Hospital to take the aluminum shipping casket to the morgue entrance. Petty Officer Dennis David was there to greet the hearse.
Petty Officer Dennis David was an E6, a first-class corpsman, but his post that day was Chief of the Day at Bethesda.
In an interview with the review board, Petty Officer David explained he was ordered to gather some men and meet the black hearse at the morgue loading dock.
He said that a simple gray shipping casket is what he and his sailors took into the morgue, but they didn't really actually take it into the morgue directly. They left it in an anteroom right outside.
After delivering the aluminum shipping casket to the morgue, Petty Officer David resumed his post.
He went to the front end of the hospital and assumed his post in a second-floor office, which happened to overlooked the front of the hospital where a large crowd was gathered. And he saw the motorcade arrive from Andrews Air Force Base. Now, this is the motorcade that was delivering the bronze Dallas casket from Air Force One to Bethesda. The people in the motorcade thought President Kennedy's body was in the bronze casket.
While the ambulance passengers head into the hospital, Agent Greer, the driver, is told by FBI agent James Sibbert to go to the morgue entrance at the back of the hospital. Here, the bronze casket was removed by Greer, Agent Kellerman, and FBI agent Sibbert and Francis O'Neill.
At about 7:17 p.m., this heavy bronze casket, which I'm sure the FBI agents did not know was empty, but it had to be empty, was taken to the morgue anteroom.
In an adjacent area, we had a refrigerated storage place with either 4 or 6, I forget the number, places for retention of bodies.
These are 2 documented entries of 2 very different types of caskets, supposedly containing the president's body, each entering Bethesda Hospital some 40 minutes apart. But the trail of casket entries remarkably doesn't stop there. A 3rd entry was documented that night.
The bronze Dallas casket made a 2nd entry that night at 8 o'clock p.m. at 2000 hours military time.
This entry was handled by the Joint Service Casket Bearer Team, or Honor Guard, whose job it was to provide ceremonial honors of the casket, up to and including the funeral.
They take it in to the morgue itself, and this happened at 8 o'clock at night. So we have 3 casket entries that night: an aluminum shipping casket at 6:35 with the president's body inside, followed by the first entry of the Dallas casket at 7:17, which was certainly empty, followed by a 2nd entry of the Dallas casket at 8 o'clock at night by a 3rd group of people, the Joint Service Casket Team. We have a shell game going on with the president's body. Under normal circumstances, how could anyone get away with this? They got away with it because at the time, the first group of sailors, Dennis David and his working party, they were sequestered and kept away from the FBI agents and the Secret Service agents' entry number 2, and they were sequestered and kept away from the Honor Guard's entry of the casket at 8 o'clock. They didn't know that happened. This is a compartmentalized operation run by Roy Kellerman. And of course, the body is now in the same casket in which it was placed in Dallas at Parkland Memorial Hospital. So to the eyes of the audience in the morgue, this completed for them what seemed like a normal chain of custody for the body.
But more importantly, why would anyone go to such lengths to perpetrate such an elaborate ruse?
The key question here is, what happened to President Kennedy's body between the time it arrived at 6:35 p.m. and the time the Honor Guard took his body into the morgue the 2nd time in the Dallas casket at 8 o'clock?
To begin to understand this, we must remember what the official version of events was. A single gunman had fired 3 shots at the president from behind, striking him twice. If the president's wounds indicate anything other than one shooter from the rear, then the official story cannot be true. By most accounts, President Kennedy's autopsy was a surreal event. Tom Robinson, an embalmer present during the autopsy, described the atypical environment in an interview with the Review Board.
He said that there were too many people in the morgue and that the atmosphere was just not professional. It was like a cocktail party or a circus, and there were clearly people there who didn't belong.
The doctor in charge, autopsy pathologist Dr. James Humes, is assisted by Dr. J. Thornton Boswell, the chief of pathology at Bethesda. They would later be joined by Army pathologist Dr. Pierre Fink.
Dr. Humes unwrapped the skull shortly after 8 o'clock. The morgue audience all exhibited horror and gasped when they saw the size of the cranial defect.
Upon hearing the gallery's reaction, Dr. Humes made what would seem to be a rather curious observation.
Dr. Humes said that it's apparent there's been surgery of the head area, namely in the top of the skull. The autopsy technicians, O'Connor and Jenkins, recall Humes asking, "Was there surgery at Parkland Hospital?" We know there was no surgery in Dallas of any kind on President Kennedy's cranium. So I think Dr. Humes panicked because of the audience reaction, and he was engaging in what a psychologist would call dissociation. He was saying, yeah, there's a problem here. I recognize it. I'm telling you about it, but surely since I'm telling you about it, you don't think I did it.
After Dr. Humes' odd statement, the crowded autopsy room was emptied so that photos and x-rays could be taken. Once completed, the audience returned and the autopsy began.
The time the autopsy officially began is the time of the first official incision on the body, which was the Y incision in the chest. That time is listed here as 8:15 p.m.
The neck wound was initially dismissed as the result of a tracheotomy, and attention was focused on the president's head wound.
Paul O'Connor was a Navy corpsman who had been president, and he described the head wound rather graphically, saying there was nothing left in the cranium except for splattered brain matter. And he was certain of this because it was his job to remove the brain.
O'Connor would also add that he didn't believe the doctors were trying to establish anything by the autopsy.
By the time Dr. Fink arrived, it was 8:30 p.m. The president's brain had already been removed from his body, as well as the heart and the lungs. So what Dr. Fink was presented with was an enormous skull defect.
Being a forensic pathologist, Dr. Fink was particularly concerned with the extent of the cranial damage.
And he could find no exit wound in the circumference of the cranial defect anywhere.
At this point, the president's body had been turned over, face down, and a rear entry wound had also been discovered in the upper back, which had no exit wound in the front, leading them to think that a bullet must still be lodged inside.
And they can't figure out what happened to the bullet that made this wound. It was a point of major concern for them. They had poked and prodded the wound, and it only seemed to go about 3 or 4 inches deep. You can understand their anxiety about this when you read James Jenkins, the lab tech's description of a flare-up, and that the gallery was very impatient, and how they seemed mad about the doctors not finding a bullet. But lo and behold, that problem would take care of itself. It turns out that a pristine bullet was found on a stretcher lying in Parkland Hospital back in Dallas. Once that bit of news was conveyed to the doctors, the riddle of the missing bullet had been solved in their minds. Dr. Fink's next concern was that he believed he had found part of an entrance wound on the back of the skull, but he couldn't find any trace of an exit wound with what was left of the top of the president's head. But lo and behold again, that problem was about to take care of itself, courtesy of skull fragments conveniently found in the back of the presidential limousine.
Roy Kellerman brought 3 fragments of skull bone into the morgue late in the autopsy and delivered them to Dr. Humes. And that Dr. Humes was instructed that they had been removed from the skull. He didn't say blasted out by the bullet, he said removed, which is a very interesting language.
Of the 3 fragments, 2 were key.
The large fragment had evidence of exit. The medium-sized fragment had the remaining circumference of the entry wound in it. So these fragments, which suddenly appeared, satisfied all of Dr. Fink's concerns.
The official autopsy could now confirm the official story. The bullet that had been found on the stretcher in Parkland was said to have come out of Governor Connolly's body. The theory being that the bullet had first gone through the president's shoulder and out his neck before entering the governor.
They certainly seem to answer any and all questions that anyone may have had in regards to the assassination scenario as it had been presented to the American public.
However, we must remember the wounds as described by many of the treatment staff at Parkland Hospital in Dallas.
The only wounds noted at Parkland during treatment on the day the president was shot was an entry wound in the front of the neck and a gaping, avulsed, exploded exit wound in the right rear quadrant of the head.
Was the back of Kennedy's head really gone? Yeah. It was? Okay. He had no brain left. It was blown out. I had to go unload him out of the car.
Yet the photos and x-rays from the autopsy clearly tell a different story.
They depict images unlike anything seen in Dallas by the treatment staff, and images that do not correspond properly with what was seen by people present at the autopsy, where they were supposedly taken. This autopsy photograph of the rear of President Kennedy's head is the most problematic and the most troubling and the most controversial photograph in the collection. You'll see from a cursory examination of this image that there is no blowout. The back of the head is inexplicably intact. Dr. John Ebersol, the autopsy radiologist, testified to the HSCA in 1978 that he had significant problems with this image.
Dr. David Mantic, a radiation oncologist with over 30 years' experience, has spent more time than anyone studying the autopsy's photo and X-ray collection at the National Archives, having visited 9 times with the permission of the Kennedy family. Dr. Mantic was able to view the photos of the back of the head stereoscopically, an optical technique by which 2 images of the same object are blended into one, creating a 3D appearance of the object.
I took 2 almost identical autopsy photographs and looked at them in a stereo viewer so that when I did that I could see a 3D perspective. If you look at the ones that are clearly of the back of the head, that you just see scalp back there.
Dr. Mantic found that this portion of the hair that appears closer to the camera and thicker and much wetter than the other hair appeared to be 2-dimensional, and the rest of the image appeared to be 3-dimensional.
The only possible explanation is there must have been some alteration of the photographs. Those clearly could not be authentic photographs of the way JFK really looked that night. I put together a list of 16 doctors at Parkland. Of all of these 16, none of them said that the photographs looked just like what they remembered at Parkland. In fact, they said the opposite. They said, that's not what we saw. So this is a remarkable, essentially unanimous disagreement with the autopsy photographs.
In this image purporting to show an entrance wound on the president's upper back, there is also no evidence of a blowout in the rear of the skull. But if the photos had been altered, how could this have been achieved in 1963?
A soft matte insert is the technical term that photographers use for this kind of darkroom work. It's not all that hard to do.
Sandra Spencer, a first-class photographer's mate, actually helped to develop the original autopsy images of the back of the head and described what she saw.
One of her strong recollections was a photograph that she developed of the back of President Kennedy's head that showed that damage was still visible even after the embalming had been completed.
She described this as clearly in the back of the head and as a blown-out chunk. A fairly graphic and specific description with a specific location as well.
It's easy to understand why unaltered photos of the back of the head have never been released.
A big hole in the back of the head would clearly imply a shot from the front, wouldn't it? That was devastating to the notion of a single gunman from the rear.
This disturbing autopsy image is the infamous so-called stare of death.
The gash in the throat would also seem to clash with the neck wound as observed at Parkland Hospital.
When President Kennedy's body left Parkland Hospital on November 22nd, the maximum width of his tracheotomy incision was perhaps 3 centimeters, and it had closed of its own volition. When examined at the autopsy, the incision in the neck was 7 to 8 centimeters wide and had widely gaping, irregular edges. It was actually quite disturbing to many of the people who were present. They couldn't understand how a trauma room surgeon could perform such a sloppy job.
Dr. John Ebersol, the radiologist present during the taking of the X-rays, described what he saw as the body was removed from the casket.
A neatly sutured transverse surgical wound across the lower neck.
That testimony supports Dr. Charles Crenshaw's defense of Dr. Perry's tracheotomy skills in Dallas.
To our clinical knowledge.
Dr. Crenshaw expressed the opinion on national TV in 1992 to ABC News that someone had tampered with this wound, mutilated it. It was at least twice its original width. Dr. Perry was a master with the blade. He would not have made a sloppy incision like this. This apparent alteration of that wound by postmortem surgery appears to be an attempt by someone to disguise the fact that President Kennedy was shot from the front and to turn a tracheotomy into an apparent exit wound. Someone did that by tampering with this wound before the start of the autopsy. All of the autopsy witnesses described this gash as being present when they first saw the body shortly after 8 o'clock. So this gash is the result of illicit, clandestine postmortem surgery by persons at Bethesda Naval Hospital sometime between 6:35 p.m. and 8 o'clock.
Back at Parkland Hospital in Dallas the next day, Nurse Audrey Bell returned to work.
Saturday morning when I got over there, Dr. Perry came up to the office, and he looked like pure hell. I said, "You look awful. Did you get any sleep last night?" And he said, "Well, not too much between the calls from Bethesda that came in during the night." I said, "What about?" He said, whether that was an entrance wound or an exit wound in the throat. He said they were wanting me to change my mind, that it was an entrance wound.
Since the autopsy photos do not show an occipital or rear wound to the president's skull, as described by many witnesses in both Dallas and Bethesda, just what type of head wound do they show? Be forewarned, the following images are very graphic.
This color autopsy image, while extremely disturbing, is very important. The true scope of the missing cranial bone in President Kennedy's head, it bears no resemblance whatsoever to the wound observed at Parkland Hospital. This is a truly enormous defect in the cranium.
Dr. Humes is very clear that no autopsy work had been done on the president's skull before either photos or x-rays were taken.
All of the x-rays were taken before any manipulations were done.
But how could this possibly be the case? Something had to have happened to that body before the photos were taken, and someone is responsible.
Dr. Humes always denied having to saw the skull open, that he always maintained that the wound was so big that he could just remove the brain with a minimum of cutting of the scalp. He never had to cut any bone. He told Dr. Fink, when Dr. Fink arrived, that no sawing of the skull was necessary to remove the brain. The young embalmer, Tom Robinson, who was in the black ambulance that arrived at 6:35 p.m., he recalls seeing the doctors saw the skull open in the back to remove the brain. We requested of Tom Robinson that he draw a wound diagram. This is the drawing executed by Tom Robinson. He drew 2 dotted lines on his sketch. The dotted lines, he explained to us, are where the doctors had to saw the head open to remove the brain. When we showed this photograph to Tom Robinson in 1996, he immediately complained to us, "This makes it look like that's what the bullet did." And he says, "That's not what the bullet did. That's what the doctors did."
The autopsy x-rays contained in the National Archives provided Dr. Mantic with a rare opportunity to examine their authenticity.
I was very interested in the anomalies in the skull x-rays in particular. The one object that most caught my eye was the so-called bullet fragment located at the back of the head, or supposedly located at the back of the head. It's 6.5 millimeters in diameter, which turns out to be precisely the caliber of the Mannlicher cano that Oswald supposedly shot. So that's an unusual coincidence. But here's what's really striking about that object. X-rays were taken at the autopsy. The point is to find bullets or bullet fragments for forensic analysis. And this object is really the most obvious metallic-like thing on any of the skull X-rays. So you'd think everyone would be very happy and pleased to find this, and there would be a lot of discussion about this. Where was it? Was this representing a shot from the front or back? And what damage potentially did it do? But what you find in the record is 0. Nobody talks about this at the autopsy. Nobody. The pathologist did not put it in the autopsy report. It's not there. John Ebersol was the official one who could interpret X-rays for everyone that night. So I spoke to John Ebersol on the telephone on 2 occasions. I asked him, Did you see that 6.5 millimeter bullet-like thing on the back of the head?
That 6.5 millimeter fragment?
Well, I tell you, I would really like to close out this discussion.
Oh, we can stop anytime you like.
Okay.
Surely.
And he absolutely wouldn't say anything more. Never spoke to anyone again about the autopsy. That was it.
Plus, when viewing the lateral X-ray, the object is barely visible.
This is a control experiment I did using a real human skull and a real bullet, 6.5 millimeter caliber, at about the same position that it was supposed to be on JFK's skull. And on the frontal view, I placed it at about the same position that you see on the JFK frontal X-ray. And right away you can see how very obvious this metallic bullet fragment is on the side view. That's not true on the JFK lateral X-ray. You can barely see anything there. So there's a gross inconsistency between the front and the side. So just nothing makes any sense. Something that also caught my eye early when I saw prints in books. The back of the skull, when viewed from the side, looks extremely white, which would represent very thick bone. And I thought of using a technique that had not been used on them before called optical densitometry. And so I took literally hundreds of measurements, point-by-point measurements on the X-rays, in which I measure the transmission of light through the film. We also have an X-ray taken from the side of JFK before he was killed. So that makes a very interesting comparison. On the X-ray taken before death, we don't see a white patch back of the head. It's drastically different from what we see on the autopsy X-ray. But what really gives it away is the optical density data. That shows that that bone is almost as dense as the densest bone in the body, which is right here around the ear canal, the petrous bone. That just makes no sense. If there were a dark area at the back, that would imply a lot of missing tissue in the back of the head, wouldn't it? And that would suggest a shot from the front. So they didn't want that. So they added the white patch to make it look like the back of the brain was all okay.
This view also provides a look at the trail of bullet debris, which leads to an important clue.
It's coming from about here as a potential entry site and going posteriorly. The largest piece in that whole trail is the one that's farthest back. Well, that means a shot from the front because the bigger pieces are going to go farther. You only have small ones up front.
Dr. Mantic also noticed something curious about a T-shaped marking that was scraped into the emulsion of the lateral X-ray.
When I looked at the surface of the film very closely, I could see that there was actually no emulsion missing. So that was a conundrum. How is it possible for that object to appear there and yet not have any emulsion missing? And there's really only one answer. This film was a copy. And so that was the best evidence that that film, that lateral skull X-ray film of JFK, cannot be an original.
Another clue as to the direction of the headshot comes from a press conference held at Parkland Hospital shortly after the president was declared dead.
At the press conference that afternoon, when the substituting press secretary was asked where the bullet had come from, and he actually points up here.
Right through the head.
Very close to the site that I was describing, and which is remarkably consistent with the X-ray.
The timeline examination that I conducted revealed that there were actually 2 brain exams following the autopsy on President Kennedy's body. This was shocking. It was the clearest indication to me that a cover-up had occurred. The first brain exam occurred very soon after the autopsy. It occurred on Monday morning, November 25th.
A photographer, John Stringer, was there at the first brain exam, and he witnessed the brain being sectioned like a piece of meat or a loaf of bread. The sections showed all the damage and were laid out on a light box so he could take photos of them. He gave his film to Dr. Humes, and he never saw it again.
The reason for sectioning the brain is to show the track of a bullet in a brain that has been damaged by gunshot. John Stringer's pictures of the coronal sections of the brain never made it into the official collection and were never placed in the National Archives. The photos that are in the archives were taken at the second brain exam by an unknown Navy photographer and cannot be viewed without permission from the Kennedy family. However, Doug Horne's position on the review board granted him unprecedented access.
The photographs in the archives today show no serial sections, no photographs of sections. They show both superior and basilar views. In other words, they show views taken both from above of the intact brain before it was cut, and views of the intact brain taken from below, of the underside and the top side of the organ. And Stringer insists that he did not take basilar views from the underneath.
Photos of a damaged but nearly intact brain also fly in the face of eyewitness descriptions.
Agent Frank O'Neill of the FBI stated to us that, in his estimation, over half of the mass of the brain was missing when removed at autopsy. The autopsy photographs in the collection today show a disrupted brain with the right cerebral cortex disrupted and outfolded in this direction, but they don't show anywhere near half of the mass of the brain missing. When FBI agent O'Neill looked at these photographs, he said, "No, this can't be." He said, "This is not the brain I saw that night." He said, "This is an intact brain, isn't it?" He was asking us.
In all honesty, I can't say that it looks like the brain that I saw, quite frankly.
In the brain photos in the archives, the right cerebellum is completely intact. It's not damaged at all. And all the witnesses in Dallas who examined the wound closely recalls severe damage to the right cerebellar hemisphere of the cerebellum.
Dr. Mantic was able to use the lateral X-rays to prove that the brain in the photos could not be President Kennedy's.
In the back, remember, it looks very white, which suggests a lot of tissue. It's just the opposite in front here, where it looks very black, which suggests there's almost nothing but air. In fact, the optical density measurements through here shows that there's about as much tissue as there is through the maxillary sinuses, which we know are air. So how can that be? Well, that's telling us that there's just no brain in almost a fist-sized area up here. But here's the problem. If you look at the brain photographs and compare the photographs of the brain to the X-rays taken from the side, you have a radical inconsistency. The photographs of the brain show that the brain is intact, or almost all intact, here in front. How can that be?
People who were present at both brain exams were Drs. Humes and Boswell. These two Navy pathologists were engaged in a charade.
So we have this dichotomy then. Something done that was reality-based, and another one that was to feed the fiction of the lone gunman.
Clearly, the government wanted the truth about what happened to President Kennedy in Dealey Plaza to be suppressed, and they wanted to support the official cover story, which is that a man in a building shot a man in a car, a lone malcontent, and it had no serious political causes or overtones or repercussions.
The public may never fully know or understand the details surrounding Lee Harvey Oswald's life or his death.
Lee Harvey Oswald was always an anomaly.
Dick Russell is the author of 2 books on the assassination and is an expert on Lee Harvey Oswald.
So supposedly Oswald, who has found himself a job right above the president's parade route when the president comes to Dallas on November 22nd, supposedly he's up there in a 6th floor window firing a Mannlicher Carcano Italian-made rifle, World War II vintage, getting off 3 shots in 6.2 seconds, fatally wounding the president. Oswald probably wasn't even on the 6th floor of the book depository at the time. Oswald told the police that at the time of the assassination, he was eating on the 1st floor in the dining room area there, the book depository, and he went up to the 2nd floor to get himself a Coca-Cola. Now, he was seen by witnesses in those locations, including one who saw him with a Coke in his hand. And Oswald correctly described 2 black employees of the depository who walked by him when he was having lunch. They later testified to this fact.
Oswald had also been seen by manager Roy Truly and Officer Marion Baker in the lunchroom on the 2nd floor just after the assassination.
So he says, "Hey, you, stop. Come here for a minute." In the meantime, Roy Truly, who continued up to the 3rd floor, realized Baker wasn't with him, and he comes down, he finds Baker on the 2nd floor. Well, the basic exchange was, does this man belong here? And Roy Truly says, yes, he's an employee, so Baker and Truly leave him and continue on.
Author and former investigative journalist Barry Ernest spent over 35 years researching and finally locating a key witness that had been disregarded by the Warren Commission. Victoria Adams, an employee at the depository, had watched the motorcade pass from a 4th floor window.
Victoria Adams stood at the window with 3 other women at the time and observed the motorcade following the route up Main Street, turning onto Houston, and then going down Elm Street, which was directly in front of the Texas School Book Depository. What she did following the final shot was linger at the window for what she said was 15 to 30 seconds, and then leave that window and run out through the office of the Scott Forsman Company, out the rear door of the office, and across the floor to the 4th floor landing, and then descend the stairs from the 4th floor to the 1st floor. Her only intention was to get outside to determine what had happened. The interesting part to her story was the fact that she went down the stairs as quickly as she did. She would have been on the stairs at the same time Oswald was descending from the 6th floor. The Warren Commission did various time tests. It knew what time Oswald descended the stairs. The problem was that Victoria Adams fit within that time frame. She testified that she did not see or hear anyone on the stairs during that period.
But a recurring theme of the Warren Commission would rear its ugly head. If something didn't incriminate or point directly to Oswald, it was often ignored or simply dismissed outright.
The commission should have been interested in further investigation of this story. This was a very critical issue. It did not include her in the time tests. She was the only one excluded from the time tests. The 3 women who stood with her, Sandra Stiles, Elsie Dorman, and Dorothy Garner, were not questioned by the Warren Commission. Particularly disturbing, we have Sandra Stiles accompanying Victoria Adams the whole way down the stairs. She's not mentioned in the Warren report, and she's not called as a witness or questioned.
Instead, the commission determined that Ms. Adams had simply been mistaken about the time she descended the stairs.
It frankly states that she was some 4 to 5 minutes later than what she said she was in coming down the stairs. Hence the reason that she did not see Lee Oswald on the stairs.
The commission also had another seeming justification to look past her claims.
In her testimony, it states that when she arrived on the 1st floor, she saw 2 employees of the depository, William Shelley and Billy Nolan Lovelady, on the 1st floor. Now, when I talked with her, she denied having in her testimony the fact that she had seen Shelley and Lovelady on the 1st floor. She flat out denied it, and she felt they had been included in there to discredit her testimony.
Another striking inconsistency is that according to the Warren report, Ms. Adams waived her right to review and sign her deposition. And that would seem to be that, a dead end. Or was it? In 1999, during one of his many trips to the National Archives, Barry discovered a crucial piece of evidence.
The Martha Jo Stroud letter was a transmittal letter written by Assistant U.S. Attorney Martha Jo Stroud in Dallas. It was written on June 2nd, 1964. And for the casual reader, it would mean nothing. But for someone who was obsessed with the Victoria Adams story, as I admit I was, it was a bombshell. And I noticed that it said she had signed and corrected her testimony. But in her official Warren Commission testimony, it says she waived her right to sign and correct her testimony. So there was that conflict. In 2002, she corroborated that by saying, no, a gentleman came over and stood over me as I signed and corrected my testimony. There were 6 minor grammatical corrections. The most damaging part of that letter, however, was the fact that apparently someone from the Warren Commission had talked with Dorothy Garner. Now, Dorothy Garner was the supervisor of Miss Adams. She was at the window with Miss Adams. She had never been questioned about her activities there. But in this letter, it stated that Dorothy Garner saw Vicki Adams and Sandra Stiles go down the stairs, after which Officer Baker and Roy Truly came up. Now we had evidence of a corroborative witness, so that was a complete 180-degree turn from what the Warren Commission was saying. What it did was it showed that Vicki Adams had been telling the truth. Rather than spark a reevaluation of her incomplete story, it was ignored and suppressed until I found it in the archives in 1999.
Also at the National Archives, 16 boxes of stenographers' tapes of the Warren Commission interviews, organized by the date of witness testimonies.
When was Vicki Adams' testimony taken? April 7th, 1964. There is no record of any tapes in existence for April 7th of 1964. The evidence supports that she is honest, but the stenographic tape, for some unknown reason, is missing.
After leaving the building, as the official story goes, Oswald then went home, got his revolver, and shot police officer J.D. Tippett, and ended up at the Texas Theater where he was arrested by police.
Oswald paraffin tested negative for nitrates on his right cheek, which is an indication that he had not fired a rifle recently. He tested positive for nitrates on his right hand, which indicated that yes, he could have been handling a firearm, and we know he had a pistol on him when he was arrested in the Texas Theater.
They shouted murder and just almost anything to try and get at this man. As you see here, the officers hustled him into the car and ran away just as fast as they could.
Used to incriminate Oswald even further, photos of him holding a rifle.
But several photographic experts looked at them and concluded they were faked. In other words, there was Oswald's head placed with somebody else's body holding the rifle. Now, Oswald himself was told about these photos after he was arrested for the assassination. So this is what Oswald tells the police. In time, I will be able to show you that this is not my picture. That picture is not mine, but the face is mine. The picture has been made by superimposing my face. The other part of the picture is not me at all, and I've never seen this picture before. In time, I will be able to show you that is not my picture and that it's been made by someone else.
I'm just a patsy.
President.
This is the basement floor of the Dallas City Hall.
Oswald has been shot.
Unfortunately for Lee Harvey Oswald and the world, he would never stand trial for the killings of Officer J.D. Tippett or President Kennedy. Bar and strip club owner Jack Ruby was a familiar face to many police officers in Dallas who would frequent his carousel club. Spotted at the police station several times while Oswald was there in custody, Ruby can be seen here amongst the reporters, waiting for a glimpse of the alleged assassin. On the morning of November 24th, during Oswald's transfer, only police and members of the press whose ID had been thoroughly checked were supposed to be present. By November 25, 1963, the day after Oswald's death, it was clear that there wasn't going to be much of an investigation beyond Lee Harvey Oswald.
My statement will be very brief. Oswald expired at 1:07 p.m.
Assistant Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach would send a memo to the White House. Known as the Katzenbach Memo, it established how the official version of events would forever be told.
He said it's important that all the facts surrounding President Kennedy's assassination be made public, in a way which will satisfy people in the United States and abroad. Number one, the public must be satisfied that Oswald was assassin, that he did not have Confederates who are still at large, that the evidence was such that he would have been convicted at trial. Number two, speculation about Oswald's motivation ought to be cut off, and we should have some basis for rebutting the thought that this was a communist conspiracy, or, as the Iron Curtain press is saying, a right-wing conspiracy to blame it on the communists. In other words, settle this thing once and for all. Don't look into this. Oswald did it. He's dead. There will be no trial. That's it.
The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives. In other words, I'm the only person in the background that knows the truth.
Do you think it'll ever come out?
No, because unfortunately, the people that had so much to gain and had such an ulterior motive for putting me in a position I'm in will never let the true facts come above board to the world.
How did it happen? They hit Connolly.
Connolly turned to the president when the first shot was fired, and I think in that turning it was where he got hit.
If he hadn't turned, he probably wouldn't have got hit.
I think that's very likely.
When the president got hit the second one?
No, the president wasn't hit with the second one.
I say if Connolly hadn't been in his way.
Oh yes. The president no doubt would have been hit.
He'd been hit 3 times.
He would have been hit 3 times.
How could Connolly have been in the way of the shooter if all the shots came from the rear?
I have therefore chosen this time and place to discuss a topic on which ignorance too often abounds, and the truth too rarely perceived, and that is the most important topic on earth, peace.
The day after President Kennedy's funeral, National Security Action Memorandum number 273 is approved by President Lyndon Johnson. The memorandum initiates the beginning of a shift of U.S. military policy in Vietnam, a shift that would represent a complete departure from Kennedy's plans for withdrawal.
What kind of a peace do I mean, and what kind of a peace do we seek? Not a Pax Americana, enforced on the world by American weapons of war.
President Johnson gives permission to formally initiate Operational Plan 34 Alpha, or O-Plan 34A. Approved by the Joint Chiefs of Staff in December, the strategy employs covert operational use of naval vessels in waters off North Vietnam.
I am talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, the kind that enables men and nations to grow and to hope.
August 2nd, the USS Maddox comes under attack in North Vietnam's Gulf of Tonkin. On August 4th, a second attack is reported. August 7th, the Gulf of Tonkin resolution is passed by the U.S. Congress, granting authorization to use conventional military forces without a formal declaration of war in the Vietnamese conflict.
Not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, peace in all time.
all-out war begins with the massive bombing campaign known as Operation Rolling Thunder. By the end of 1965, over 200,000 U.S. combat troops are on the ground, over 400,000 in 1966, and 540,000 by 1968.
I speak of peace, therefore, as the necessary, rational end of rational men. I realize the pursuit of peace is not as dramatic as the pursuit of war, and frequently the words of the pursuers fall on deaf ears, but we have no more urgent task.
A small group of private U.S. construction firms are contracted to build the infrastructure necessary to support and move U.S. forces throughout South Vietnam. These Vietnam builders would eventually be responsible for $1.9 billion of business.
The United States, as the world knows, will never start a war. We do not want a war. We do not now expect a war. This generation of Americans has already had enough, more than enough, of war and hate and oppression.
Over 500 firms had contracts for services related to the war. Over 50 of those had contracts worth over $100 million each.
We shall also do our part to build a world of peace where the weak are safe and the strong are just. We are not helpless before that task or hopeless of its success. Confident and unafraid, we must labor on, not towards a strategy of annihilation, but towards a strategy of peace.
We have shown how the Secret Service broke from standard protocols and have proven through modern forensics that a shot or shots were fired from the front. We have also shown that the president's wounds did not match from Dallas to Bethesda, and that the chain of custody of the body could not have been what it was reported to be. We have shined light on the discrepancies in the autopsy and its records, and how the Warren Commission discredited witnesses and evidence. All of which supports, irrefutably, that there had been a coup in Camelot.
The Mafia didn't have custody of the body and the photographs and the x-rays. The Cubans did not have custody of the body and the photographs and the x-rays, nor did the Russians. The autopsy and the records of the autopsy were controlled by two organizations, the U.S. Secret Service and the United States Navy.
As time has passed, those who would know are all but gone. Yet history has a way of sorting things out, and there are truths still being revealed. There is also another fact that we can be certain of. As long as there are those who ask the questions, there will be those who seek the answers.
A place where those who hate ignorance may strive to know, where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
In an adjacent area, we had a refrigerated storage place with maybe 4 or 6, I forget, places for retention of bodies.
There were too many people in the morgue and that the atmosphere was just not professional. It was like a cocktail party or a circus, and there were clearly people there who didn't belong.
Buildings were not properly monitored in Dallas. Windows were not even properly monitored by the Secret Service.
Oswald probably wasn't even on the 6th floor of the book depository at the time.
Kennedy is facing the crowd at almost a 90-degree angle, waving to them. He's hit in the neck just before coming out from behind the sign. You can see his arms reaching up, clutching at his throat. Now, he was facing the direction of the grassy knoll area when he was shot. So it's certainly possible that a shot could have in fact come from him. Many eye and ear witnesses believe that a shot or shots came from that knoll. Plus, there were several witnesses on the overpass who say that they saw a puff of smoke come from that area as well.
Then there becomes a portion of the plaza that is viable for the shooter.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade. Something is terribly wrong. A shooting in the motorcade.
The president is dead.
Most Americans don't know that President Kennedy's body actually arrived 20 minutes before the bronze Dallas casket.
They left Kennedy a sitting duck.
This startling investigation exposes powerful new evidence in America's most infamous cold case.
There's a lot of people that believe that a single shooter is a viable theory, but it's not.
With in-depth study of the failings of Secret Service protections.
These men were sworn to protect the president, to dive in front of a bullet if need be, to sacrifice their body. And when the assassination begins, he orders the men not to move. 1963 protocol, President Kennedy should have lived.
Analysis of the Zapruder film using never-before-seen 6K digital scans at 10 times the resolution of high definition.
Forensic investigation and research had not caught up to where we are now. I can take that angle and extend it out into Dealey Plaza and say, somewhere in this area, the shooter for President Kennedy was standing.
Modern forensic science is utilized to conclusively determine the location of the shooter for the fatal headshot.
The grassy knoll is excluded.
And shocking new medical evidence is uncovered in chilling detail.
Someone had mutilated this wound by post-mortem surgery, an attempt to disguise the fact that President Kennedy was shot from the front.
The photographs of the brain show that the brain is almost all intact here in front. How can that be? Those clearly could not be authentic photographs.
Was Oswald's arrest a little too convenient?
Oswald probably wasn't even on the 6th floor of the book depository at the time.
And the findings of a decades-long search for the mysterious girl on the stairs are explained.
She would have been on the stairs at the same time Oswald was descending from the 6th floor.
I'm just a patsy.
President.
Devastating to the notion of a single gunman from the rear.
With insights into the politics of the time and Kennedy's plan to withdraw from Vietnam, a plan that was changed a day after his funeral.
I speak of peace, therefore, as the necessary, rational end of rational men. I realize the pursuit of peace is not as dramatic as the pursuit of war.
This moving examination of new evidence and interviews uncovers the dramatic tale of a coup in Camelot.
The American people deserve to know the truth. They deserve to know what really happened in Dealey Plaza. And so my job is to tell them.
Thank you very much for coming to this advanced screening of A Coup at Camelot. I've been working on this film for the last couple of years now, really immersed in the JFK assassination research world. And we're really excited to have so many people in the audience that are actually a part of the history of this event, and so many people that are part of the research community, which Art can tell you a little bit about who's with us tonight.
Yes, we've got some people that appeared in the movie who I want to mention first, who really blew our minds, and we couldn't have done it without them. Everybody that's in this movie needed to be in this movie and wanted them badly. We've got Jerry Dealey. Jerry, I want to apologize now. He gave us an Oswald tour, and I was driving, and I was a little tired, so.
It was a little monkey ride.
That was a stop sign, Jerry would say. That was a red light. So thanks for the light. Thanks for putting up. Hey, all right. Jerry Fiester's here, who is just phenomenal, I think, and has some amazing stuff. And Douglas Horne, who we really couldn't have done this movie without him. He saved it many times over when we were having some problems in the beginning. The significance of having this movie here, where the official story was supposed to end, right up there in the middle of the story didn't really end here, as we all know. It kept going and it got bigger and bigger. And over half a century later, we're all still here. So I just want to thank all of you for coming out.
Thank you very much.
recurring theme of the Warren Commission would rear its ugly head. If something didn't incriminate or point directly to Oswald, it was often ignored or simply dismissed outright.
The commission should have been interested in further investigation.
I enjoyed it. I hope everybody goes out and sees it, and I hope it changes some people's minds, especially historians like myself. So I enjoyed it.
I think it's just very interesting that certain things are missing from the archives, and certain people were never interviewed who were eyewitnesses. Very well done, very conclusive, very thorough. It's fascinating.
Doesn't try to shock, doesn't try to surprise, lets the audience kind of decide for themselves. From that point of view, it's an excellent objective film.
We had a very enthusiastic response. I don't think we have any kind of an agenda other than to put the facts out there. And the most important thing the film does for me anyway is it evokes an emotion from the viewer. I really feel blessed to have been part of this movie, and our team, although it's small, it's mighty. We've met some incredible researchers, and they really have laid the foundation and the groundwork for people like us and other filmmakers to carry this on. Hopefully not another 50 years. Maybe we can affect some permanent change.
It was beautifully produced, wonderfully edited. I think that there were no crazy people spouting crazy ideas. It was just very matter of fact. This is what the facts are. They're well documented, and you can decide for yourself what you want to believe.
Sherry Fiester, the forensics expert, makes it very clear that the lone shooter scenario is no longer viable from the standpoint of modern forensics. I think the second important aspect of the film, the key aspects of the evidence used by the Warren Commission to support its conclusions no longer have any credibility whatsoever.
Hopefully one more step towards the evolution of discovering the truth about what happened with JFK. As filmmakers, it lays on our shoulders to some degree to bring us to a little bit of a higher level of truth.
In an interview with the review board, Petty Officer David explained he was ordered to gather some men and meet the black hearse at the morgue loading dock.
He said that a simple gray shipping casket is what he and his sailors took into the morgue, but they didn't really actually take it into the morgue directly. They left it in an anteroom right outside.
Further evidence is contained in a report written by Marine Sergeant Roger Boyjin.
The context of this entire report of his is about security he arranged for the president's body at Bethesda Naval Hospital. So when his entry states, at approximately 1835, the casket was received at the morgue entrance, it's clear that he's talking about the president's casket.
After delivering the aluminum shipping casket to the morgue, Petty Officer David resumed his post.
We have a second witness to post-mortem surgery on President Kennedy's cranium, and that's Navy X-ray technician Ed Reed. Ed Reed witnessed Dr. Humes make a long incision with his scalpel in the scalp just behind the hairline. and that he then took a circular bone saw, Dr. Humes took a circular bone saw and began cutting open the skull in that area. Most importantly, Ed Reed's recollection identifies who did the postmortem surgery. And it makes clear how deceitful Dr. Humes was when he announced in front of the large audience following 8 o'clock p.m., "There's been surgery of the head, namely in the top of the skull. Was any surgery performed at Parkland Hospital in Dallas?"